Okay, so serious question. Are men okay?
This is a shakedown.
Shannon Sharp is attempting to clear his name after facing a lawsuit for allegedly raping a woman on multiple occasions.
Uncle Shay Shay, I'm standing with you, I think it's a scam.
Halle Bailey is taking legal action against her ex, DDG. The Little Mermaid star was granted a temporary domestic violence restraining order on May 13th against the musician.
You continue to be with the man, or you're still cordial with the man after you claim he was abusive to you, but you held photos and you've held evidence in the tuck, and you only bring it to light once you don't have compliance. That's called extortion.
I don't believe none of it. I don't believe it until I see that. I gotta hear his side. I don't go off pictures. I know how it's fake.
He hit Halle. I'm good. I'm gonna keep it a buck, bro. DDG always been good, bro, to me, because there's a shot that shit not even real.
On Friday night, Drake shared a petition on Instagram urging California Governor Gavin Newsom to pardon Lanus.
It is our intention to make a request to the governor to either pardon or commute the sentence of Mr. Peterson, so that when he recovers from this attack, he's not returned to a jail cell, but that he's allowed to go home.
Tory's always free Tory. Show the bullet wound. Sorry.
Yeah. It's time we have a real conversation about how men feel about women, and in turn, how women feel about men beyond the typical gender war talking points. And that's going to require brave investigation and deep cultural analysis, which, I don't mind. In the past month, a bevy of high-profile male celebrities at DDG have all been under fire for accusations of gender-based violence. Everything from SV, DV, and Black Baby Gravy have all made their way from Shannon Sharp's big black bedroom, allegedly, into the internet streets. And of course, in a social climate in which gender discourse is one of the most provocative topics on and offline, there has been a lot of contention in barbershops and comment sections all around the world. And honestly, it's not really the fact that these conversations are happening that sparks interest in me, because, the heteros are obsessed with fighting with the gender they claim to love. It's the nature of these conversations, the tone, the context. In discussions about male violence against women, men have found a way to center themselves, to establish themselves as the more affected party. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with FD Signifier in an upcoming video about the gender crisis in America, in which he said something that sparked a thought in me.
And patriarchy has a way of redefining big problems through, well, how is this affecting men? Specifically, what about white men? How are they doing? You know what I'm saying? Are they okay? Because if they're not okay, then something's wrong with society. I have a video that, God willing, will drop by the time we finish talking about the black man not going to college thing. But one point I make is that black men don't go to college, and people are like, well, what's wrong with black men? White men don't go to college, and people are like, well, what's wrong with society?
And it's that ability of a specific group of men to exacerbate conversations about, specific groups or specific issues facing specific groups into larger societal discourse that requires national attention. And that just makes me nervous, because I've been noticing a trend. Now, I'm going to say something that's pretty presumptuous, so let me hold your hair with a napkin in between it, because I know you girls like to tussle. I think there's a legitimate argument to be made that the gender divide has now become greater than that of the racial divide.
Now you're in the sunken place.
Now, hold on. Allow me to rephrase. There is widespread multi-platform propagandizing happening in politics, pop culture, podcasts, digital and traditional media that says that there is a concerted effort to denigrate men. And the responsible parties are power-hungry women, trans women cosplaying as the wrong gender, and ball-busting feminists, all out to remove men's social, economic, and legislative power. The sentiment is that they don't just want equality, no. They want a feminine supremacy in which men are second-class citizens.
That is funny.
Now, you may laugh, but that message has been so effective that we see a group of people who have historically never even acknowledged the disadvantage of men of color, or the disadvantages that men of color face, now doing a 360 or a 180 and beginning to acknowledge their disadvantages solely through the lens of gender.
Especially black men. I love black men. I love them. I don't do quite as well with black women, I must say.
Thereby creating a gender-based solidarity rooted in an us versus them approach that disproportionately benefits white men. I've got to give it to him. It is pretty impressive propaganda for a country with 400 years of a checkered past. Now, this is a big claim, and like with any big claim, I think that it's important to be specific, as everything is contextual. The context in which I see the most gendered solidarity and simultaneously a lot of racial divide is in the conversations about alleged male violence against women. So today I want to pull a Deborah Cox and look at the history of how did we get here? Because nobody's supposed to be here. Seriously, I want to critically engage with the data about false accusations. Who's most likely to cast false accusations? Who's most likely to be the victim of false accusations, right? In the context of allegations of gender-based violence, all in an effort to really understand why it is that I see so many men in the digital landscape defending alleged and verified abusers. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Conversations about gender-based violence are always important, but I found this conversation today particularly pressing given the time of history that we're living in. This is the time when Black culture, Black art, and Black history are being systematically erased and bastardized. When anti-segregation laws are under attack. Sister, they're trying to bring back Jim Crow! This is a time when a unified racial movement is deeply needed, particularly for Black folks who are being disproportionately targeted, and brown folks. But how do we coalesce if there's an entire faction, let's say half of us, don't even believe that the other half even likes us? You can't build a coalition without trust. And be clear, men don't trust that women even like them either. One thing remains true, guys. A house divided against itself will what?
Fall.
Correct. This video is sponsored by Ground News, but more on that later. Hey, homeboy and homies, welcome back to the HBC Study Hall, Herbie's Black Cultural Study Hall, a mutual learning space dedicated to the study of Black culture and progressive discourse. And I say that it's a mutual learning space because we're both, or all, how many people are in the room with you? We're all students in the HBC Study Hall. So please feel encouraged to comment any questions, corrections, or additional research and data in the comment section down below. I welcome it. It's been 3 months, or nearly 3 months, since my last YouTube video on this channel, and I have missed you. I've missed you. But I've been gone for good reason, I'll say that. If you're a Patreon member, or if you're subscribed to my other channel, Homegirl Hang Out with Herbie, where I do my weekly live recorded pop culture commentary show, Homegirl Hang Out with Herbie, then you've seen me around. Shameless plug, the link to both are in the description box down below. But even if you're just subscribed here and you have your notifications turned on, then you probably will have noticed that in this time of my absence, I had a speaking engagement at Princeton University in which I discussed the importance of intersectional or inclusive feminism that expands beyond just gender-based discussions, but intersects at the intersection of class, race, gender, sexuality, sexual proclivity, and all of the other things that make us who we are. I've interviewed FD Signifier, Conscious Lee, T Noir, and the Emmy Award-winning Laverne And I've done that all in an effort to curate a comprehensive conversation about the consequential world of gender and feminism. We're at a time in America where there is a gender problem. Okay? And so everything from gender wars, gender rights, gender roles, and the invention of gender as we know it will be discussed in that upcoming video. But more on that later. More on that later. This video just so happens to be a fortuitous byproduct of that research that I've been doing and the social climate. Girl, a lot has been going on. These niggas been acting up, and so it's time they get snatched up. I took some time off to rest, but now it's game time, bitches. Bro. Seriously, the purview of this video is gender-based violence. This would have been an individual chapter in the longer form video on the gender crisis, but there's been a concurrence of popular men, famous men, and Diddy who have been accused of gender-based violence. And so I felt, no, this is the time for me to stop what I'm doing and to use the largest platform that I have with over 100,000 subscribers, which also was an impetus for me pulling back and really honing in on the HBC Study Hall and making sure that I have more important socio-cultural conversations on this very large platform. So I said, you know what? It's time to stop what I'm doing and address this. So we are going to talk about the specific cases of Diddy, DDG, Tory, and Black Baby Gravy. But I do think it's important to begin with contextualizing these stories by starting with the truth. Women, cis and trans alike, are disproportionately more likely to be the victims of gender-based violence as opposed to the perpetrators. And there's a bevy of research that suggests that, and we're gonna get into the weeds of it, okay? Some of the nuances and the complexities of it as well in terms of false accusations. But if this is the truth, if this is the statistical reality, and if those numbers only increase at the intersection of race and gender presentation in terms of like the difference between trans women's engagement with violence and cis women's engagement with violence, then why do men feel that they are victims every time these talking points, these pop culture stories hit the internet streets? And even go so far as to campaign for the reversal of, someone who is found guilty in the court of law. Howdy, you can blame Rock Nation all you what, boop? He's going to continue to rot! Thank you, Harry. Hermione. That said, history tells us that this reaction is nothing new. It's an issue of not only displaced anger, but also misinformation, the hidden history of men's rights activists. Fancy meeting you here. Listen, I'm not gonna mince words with you. Many of you know I like to know stuff. I like to make sure that my opinions and hot takes are backed by data and reliable research to the best of my ability. It is the Virgo rising in me, which means I read a lot. And that can be exhausting. Specifically, the piece of parsing through various different articles and an attempt to find fact-based information from credible publications and not just Joe Schmo up the street writing opinion pieces in his mama's basement. Which is why I'm working with Ground News. I love them for real. Ground News is a website and app that aggregates thousands of articles a day and organizes them by story. Each story includes a visual breakdown of the political bias, reliability, ownership, and even the headlines to help you understand the perspectives that are influencing them. So say I wanted to learn more about a given topic, the gender pay gap, for example. Ground News gives me a bevy of articles to choose from various different political leanings. This way I know I'm getting information from all sides of the political spectrum. As you'll see here, when I searched gender pay gap and Ground News, I found a story entitled, "Study Finds That Most Men Are Blind to the Fact That Women Make Less Money," which has about 25 sources reporting on it. Yonhap News, which leans right, ran with the headline, "The worst gender bullying is the gap in wages between men and women," tying it to a broader conversation about workplace harassment in South Korea. Meanwhile, the New York Post, which leans left, pointed out that 15% of Americans don't even believe the gap exists, men being twice as likely as women to say that. Same topic, totally different angles, and that's what I love. I love feeling like I'm getting a full picture of the story, like with their blind spot feature, for example. It basically shows you what stories are being missed by both left and right-wing media, so you can get an opportunity to see stories you likely otherwise would not have seen. Girl, you better come get you one of these. The Vantage plan, which I use, offers unlimited access to Ground News features, including the blind spot feed, bias distribution tools, and more. And for a limited time, you could get 40% off. Yes, 40% off you if you go to ground.news/Herbie. It brings the price down to about $5, which is approximately the cost of a coffee. So if you're like me and you want to access a lot of information in one space, one website or app, go to ground.news/Herbie, click the link in the description box down below, or use the QR code on the screen, honey, to get Ground News today. Now, back to the video. We understand that this issue boils down to women's ability to be believed and men's fear of one of two things: being criminalized, which I think is a legitimate fear, and the fear of the loss of power that happens when you're held accountable, which is an illegitimate fear, if you ask me. Then we understand that there's a history of men who have fought against women's right to be believed to avoid realizing their deepest fears. And these men, whether they call themselves it or not, are men's rights activists. Or at the very least, unbeknownst to them, are parroting or regurgitating talking points from the men's rights movement. These are folks who believe that there is a system that disadvantages or disenfranchises them on the basis of being male in various areas of society, from child custody, the draft, education, and a lot more. Now, some of these points actually have merit and are definitely worth a serious conversation and investigation on the gender disparity in these various areas. But for the sake of staying within the purview of this video and not spilling over into my ideas for that upcoming video on the gender crisis, we're going to examine solely through the lens of the legal process or the legal system's engagement with intimate partner violence. Huh? Are you saying you've never heard of the MRA or men's rights activists? I think that's intentional. Their ability to remain covert but still infiltrate various areas of society via, red pill podcasts, streamers, hell, even the judicial and electoral politics. Get it out, mama. That's impressive. It also makes sense of how DJ Academics can get on his platform and say that Halle Bailey aggregating evidence of instances of alleged abuse is extortion, and his audience of overwhelmingly men will sit up there and agree.
That's called extortion.
We're definitely gonna dig in that ass later. Men's rights activists, or MRA groups, have formed almost entirely as a response to feminism and movements for women's advancement throughout history, and it's very well documented. The first time this term is even used publicly is in the mid-19th century in response to the women's suffrage movement and the rise in the use of the term women's rights, which was actually controversial and bucked the system in which women didn't really have rights. And of course, these jealous ass motherfuckers had to drop their own diss track and attempt to popularize the term men's rights, which is essentially just American rights because they already had them. Now, if we fast forward to the 20th century, we see these movements of men gaining more steam, and we see how they specifically respond to the progression for women in the context of intimate partner violence and, you know, the request to be treated equally in the context of intimate relationships. If we're looking at the 60s and 70s, where feminist efforts brought more attention to the movement, and also more attention to the domestic violence that women were experiencing, which led to, you know, women's only shelters, legal protections, and broader public awareness, we see how the MRAs responded. They actually claimed that women's only shelters were evidence of gender bias and not actually as a result of them being disproportionately unsafe when they're in shelters with men. And this right here is a key tactic of MRAs. Misrepresenting or outright falsifying statistical data on intimate partner violence. Groups like the National Coalition for Men, founded in 1977, and A Voice for Men, founded in 2009, would misrepresent or cite studies like that of, and I want to make sure I'm getting this correct, Murray Strass and Richard Gallus, which did suggest that men and women initiate intimate partner violence at similar rates. However, what they didn't let you know, they failed to mention that these studies were really often measuring minor acts, i.e. slapping, in the context of self-defense. They also conveniently left out information about injury severity. Gallus himself has actually come out and condemned men's rights activists for distorting his work, and he's noted that men's harm against women causes far more physical violence and fear, that it's more dangerous. MRAs have also helped to spread the lie that false grape allegations happen at about 40 to 50% of the time, and they often cite a study by Eugene Koenig. Now, that study has never been replicated, and if you know anything about social science, being able to replicate the studies successfully significantly elevates the substantiality of the results. I had to jump back in here and say that it's not exactly that it's never been replicated. That's, I guess, me being hyperbolic. It's just that his findings that 40 to 50% of rape allegations are false have not been replicated in larger, more methodologically robust studies, right? And his work is often heavily criticized and considered an outlier in the academic literature. And it's criticized for its small, non-representative sample sizes, right? And for lacking independent verification of recantations and possible police bias and other limitations of his work. So it's not seen as serious, verifiable, or academically viable. And I think that that is the point that I'm trying to make here. His work was actually in direct opposition to a body of studies that were done in the United States, in Australia, and in Britain, all of which that confirm the actual number of false grape allegations are between 2 and 8%. 2 and 8%. That's a big jump for 40%. If men's rights activist organizations were actually interested in talking about the disparity that men face within the context of false accusations, they would be highlighting, and again, I want to make sure I'm getting this correctly, they would be highlighting the National Registry for Exonerations 2024 annual report that found that nearly 60% of exonerees were black. They would be highlighting their 2022 annual report that found that black people were 8 times more likely than white people to be wrongly convicted for a crime involving sexual assault, sexual violence. That most, and when I say most, I mean 61% of exonerated black defendants who were incarcerated for sexual assault have been convicted of graping a white woman. How about addressing the racist myths that suggest that black men are disproportionately more sexually violent and that all black people look alike? Girl, that same 2022 report found that the leading cause for black people being wrongfully convicted was them just mistaking the wrong black person. Particularly, white people were uniquely erroneous in this area. They just couldn't tell black people apart. Or maybe they didn't care to. I don't know. But this is something that you would think the men's rights movement would be addressing, but they are not. You know who is addressing this? Feminists. Intersectional feminists. Womanists. Black feminists. And that gets a lot of men upset. A lot of men don't want to identify as feminists, and they don't want to acknowledge or highlight that the road to liberation has been written out by the same women and queer folk that they hate. Ooh, ciao. And that actually really does bother me. It's not just a kiki herbal tea sipping moment. I was having a conversation with Feek, FD Signifier, and George of Consciously. And if you guys want to see either one of those interviews in full, you can become a channel member in the description, or you can join the Patreon, both of which are in the description. But I asked them specifically, if you guys both know that the work that you do is feminist, why don't you publicly identify as such? Or why don't more people like you who are doing inherently feminist work when you're talking about the systems that disenfranchise men and men of color in particular? Why don't you identify that way publicly? And here's what they had to say. You're using a lot of feminist language to have this gendered conversation, right? And then you're talking about the lack of role models that young boys and even males, adult males, have in terms of trying to identify not only what a real man is or what a real man does, but also just how to be a good human in a male body, right? And how to navigate the systems that impede your success, that create these kind of mental health, these poor mental health conditions. You said something once before, and I have the video, so we'll play it for you. And I'd love for you to expound that alluded to why you don't call yourself a feminist.
Don't really refer to myself as a feminist, despite what my content tends to project to the world. And this is not because I have an aversion to feminist theory. I'm a person whose core readings in grad school all hinge around feminist gender studies. But it's because of that reading that I recognize that feminists and feminism are loaded terms for a man to describe himself as. And while I think men that call themselves feminists are probably mostly okay, men who promote themselves and monetize themselves as feminists are very much a mixed bag. And if I have to be honest, probably should not be trusted. So I just personally avoid that altogether and hope that my actions speak for me.
For me, what was a little like, this is a disheartening is I see too often then the people who take up space in this discourse are women or queer folks like myself. And we're not using the term, saying loudly, I am a feminist, as a masculine man like yourself, gives other folks permission, men specifically, hetero, mask-presenting men, permission to say, no, like I too am a feminist.
So what you just said is very true, right? Me calling myself a feminist as a traditionally masculine male, married to a black woman, 2 little boys. I have all the things that the manosphere type cats say they want. They don't want that shit, but they say they want those things, right? That is the ideal. So calling myself a feminist would be a very powerful like statement in that regard. The flip side to me, and from my standpoint, is the framework and the concept of feminism is so ripe for distortion and extortion and grifting that I almost fear the ripple effect for other men, for other black men. I've seen the Aziz Ansari's. The part of it is low-key just marketing and branding. It's like, I don't want to brand and market myself around the label because the consequence of that is, one, giving power to the co-option of feminism, which has also happened. A lot of people co-opted feminism. Katy Perry and them just went to space. Look at that.
Girl.
Look at feminism.
Girl!
And also, I think the real core of your disappointment, which I have to just sit in, is I know if I call myself a feminist, certain niggas will not listen. And I've been feeding this intersectional theory for 5 years to 1 million subscribers, with just feeding them the meat of it. You know what I mean? I've been giving them hot dogs without telling them how it's made, is my whole point. Right. And I just felt like by pulling the core values and the ideology into so much of my work without naming it, I'm being more useful.
That is, I think, the prerequisite of the deprogramming or the unlearning that has to happen for them to be able to fully embrace feminism, because right now they automatically view black men, feminism, white supremacy. Black men being anything but masculine manifestation of William Lynch letter. The William Lynch letter, and it's gonna be like, hey, you're giving this fictional historical hope to being all this credit for saying that, same gender loving homosexuality in our community came from this, and it's like, man, you're giving white folks too much power. But because this is a very popular phenomenon in our community, the gay agenda, they want to demasculate us, they feminize us. You know what I'm saying? To me, like when I'm talking to people about feminism, womanism, whatever, that is what they latch on to. Is that this is a programming that is trying to demasculinize Black men. This is a ideology that is trying to feminize Black men. This is an ideology that's trying to make it where our women don't want to be with the man and they want to be the man. And it's like, this is what I mean when the first response I said is like, hey, we invest in the shit that literally defines an opposition to us, that does us no service. There are too many Black men that buy into the rigid nuclear family gender roles, and they believe that if a woman not bound down and confirming to the way they understand that shit, that they are being anti-Black in a way, you not playing up my masculinity and manhood, and woman, you ain't no real woman if you can't make me feel like a man. Therefore, feminism is bad.
Now, I respect their individual positions. This work is bigger than one individual man, right? But I do find it particularly sad the road that men's rights activists have gone down, right? This self-destructive road for everyone who is not a wealthy white man. Because MRAs, like the men's liberation movement, initially started out under the tutelage of feminists in the 60s and 70s. They were condemning the rigidity of gender roles against men, which demonstrated an understanding of the patriarchal restraints that are on men specifically, of which there are many. But eventually the movement split up, and now the most vocal group is incredibly conservative, incredibly right-wing, and incredibly white supremacist. They found a way to still strike these anti-patriarchal points and also remain anti-feminist. These men both don't like patriarchy and its demands, and don't like the people who have created work that want to deconstruct or abolish that system. They can recognize the expectation to provide, and not having the economic power to do so threatens their place in not just the dating and marriage market, but also in larger society, and not want to listen to the folks who have ideas about what to do about it. And before you go saying, men don't really care about partnership and marriage, that's a woman thing. Well, the data has something else to say. In fact, a 2023 Pew Research study of over 5,000 Americans found that 48% of women say that marriage is not too or not at all important for a fulfilling life, compared to 38% of men. I don't know about you, but that means more men feel that marriage is important for a fulfilling life. In 2024, we see that trend continuing in a Wall Street Journal poll, or an NORC poll, where 58% of women aged 18 to 29 said that marriage was at least somewhat essential to their vision of the future and attaining the American dream, compared to 66% of men. So if I have to just put this to you plainly, more men desire marriage and partnership, and they're being priced out of it. Their position in that market is threatened, which I'm sure doesn't feel good. Men like marriage, and that's because they disproportionately benefit from it. There was a Yale study that found that men have greater health outcomes as compared to their wives in a marriage, and that there was a different study that found that they have more, better financial outcomes, that on average married men receive a boost in earnings, while women usually experience a financial penalty, specifically after they have children. And so we see more and more women rejecting those roles, rejecting traditional gender roles and expectations. And this is directly linked to this conversation about how men feel about women, and how and when they should speak up about, S abuse and violence against them. Because historically, what do men do when they don't like what women are doing? Well, they create a 900-page manifesto, they stack the court, they win the presidency with blatant misogynistic, anti-trans, and white supremacist rhetoric, and they attempt to make America traditionally straight again. But more on that later. Let's get into these specific cases, shall we? Let's go make these plates for these men so that we can read them and eat them alive. Seriously though, I do think that these cases give us more room to look at the specific ways of how men feel that these women are doing it wrong, that they're going about it wrong, and the reasons for why they just don't believe women. Clearly, these men are not okay. Disclaimer, all of these cases being discussed are allegations until or unless proven otherwise in a court of law. I am not representing any of these allegations as fact. So let's start with Mr. Black Baby Gravy himself, Shannon Sharpe. Shannon Sharpe is currently facing a $50 million civil suit by a Jane Doe who was allegedly 19 at the time when she met him in 2023. Now, for context, Shannon Sharpe is 56 now. He'll be 57 next month. That means he was either 54 or 55 in 2023 when they met. It is important to note that at the time of these allegations, Shannon Sharpe was eligible for an AARP card, Life Alert, and really nearing the age of eligibility for Medicare. Yes, that's right. It's safe to say that Shannon Sharpe, you are an old lady.
You are very old and you need to play your age and not 12. You're an old lady.
And I do think it's important to underscore that Shannon Sharpe has a bad back, feeble bones, and children over 10 years older than the alleged victim because, it really places into context the unethical nature of this relationship. I was disgusted before I even read the report on the allegations against him. Oh, girl, don't get me started on what I read about that black baby gravy. Jesus Christ, what the heck? Oh my God. What did Viola Davis say? You're a coon. You're a dicker. So the opening statement of the Jane Doe suit reads as follows. A woman can say yes to consensual S relations with a man 99 times, but when she says no, even once, that no means no. Defendant Shannon Sharpe, a man who is accustomed to getting what he wants, completely fails to understand this basic concept. And in response, according to the New York Post, Shannon Sharpe's legal team released X-rated text messages allegedly between he and, the Jane Doe. Now, of course, her name has come out, but I'm going to keep referring to her as Jane Doe because that's how we do in HBC Study Hall. Now, I do believe this information does add additional context, so let's go ahead. And it should be noted that this lawyer is Tony Bugsby, the same lawyer who, had that incident with Jay-Z. So however y'all feel about how that went with Jay-Z, use that information. It's important to note. Now, the texts do read, I want to be abused, daddy. Okay. I want you to put a dog collar around my neck and me while you're fucking me. Ooh. She allegedly also texted Shannon a photo of a woman tied up in a compromising position and wrote on March 5th, 2023, tie me up like this and me. Shannon replied, if I knew how to, I would. Shannon also revealed in a video that she is an ex-worker for OnlyFans, which for me doesn't change the opening statement, right? Essentially, anybody, including an ex-worker and the girls who like it rough, girls, some like it hot, also have the capacity to say no, and there are men who will not listen to that. But I do think that this does change things up for the jury. Considering that she's explicitly asked before in the past to be abused. I mean, she said it. In the court of public opinion, if you let the internet have it, she's on trial just for being okay? Just don't have the right to say no, right? That's why we supported the slut walks, because it's like, girl, my body, my choice, my mouth, my choice. And I said no. But I do think that this is going to be difficult. This, of course, brought up a prior case that Shannon Sharpe was in with a woman named Michelle Evans, where she filed for a restraining order against him for alleged assault in 2010 and a defamation suit by the same woman in 2023. Folks are saying that she's too old and too ugly to be believed. Here's what I'll say. In cases where it is interracial, I do raise an eyebrow. I do, because of the studies that we bore out about how black men are disproportionately more likely to be convicted of crimes in the context of sexual assault when the accuser is a white woman. And that has to do with a lot of the history of this country. But because of the nature of a man who, I've heard the audio of Shannon saying, if you don't stop saying it, when I see you, I'm going to you. You don't have a choice in the matter. That wasn't a sexual context. To me, that sounded like a threat. Because you were willing to be a nearly 60-year-old grandpa who could be this child's grandfather and put your black baby gravy in that translucent temptress, I don't know where to go here. I'm at a loss for words, honey. I'm at a loss for words. I'd love to see more of this evidence play out in court. But we do see more fire happening on part of the alleged victim. And I think it's due to, in large part, her being an ex-worker and the other one being too old, too fat, too ugly in the eyes of some people to be a victim. Now let's move on to Daryl, AKA DDG. DDG, that should now stand for don't do it, gang. Don't do it, gang. Whenever you think about talking about Halle Bailey on those live streams, just don't do it. Halle Bailey has been granted a restraining order against him. She alleged physical, emotional, and financial abuse and fears for her safety as well as her son's, as she alleges that one of these incidences where he allegedly took her head and put it up against a steering wheel and fought her happened in front of her son. Girl, I need an herbal tea break. A herbal... Jesus Christ. Not the baby. And as such, she's been granted temporary sole legal custody. And at this time of filming, she is still waiting for a no contact provision, which I believe means that he can't contact her in private or speak about her in public. That's what I believe. I guess he'll just have to go back to speaking to that AI version of her in front of his followers.
Where's Halo at?
What do you mean? He's sleeping, he's in bed, RN?
Give me my son back.
What? Why are you acting like this? What have I ever done for you to act like I'm some sort of monster that would keep your son from you?
Honey, get that baby some milk. He is unwell. This to me does constitute psychological abuse. To me, you're a weirdo. And this conversation is no longer about what do the facts say? What evidence does she have? What evidence has she brought against him? Let's wait until we get more evidence in the context of the court. It's everybody who has any animosity or any animus for their baby mama painting Halle Bailey as their baby mama. You don't want him to see his son because what has he done? He's been taking to his platform, building a narrative, as she's been saying nothing. That, she won't let me see my kid. I haven't seen my kid in so long. Whoop-de-whoop. When the evidence that we've seen supports that, she's been reaching out to your mom and setting dates for you to see your son, and you've not been following through. And with her being an actress, with over $500 million in the box office already, her being, a singer signed to Beyonce, Giselle Knowles Carter, and you being a streamer. And there's nothing wrong with being a streamer. I think, the work is honest and it pays the bills. But I do think that there's a sense of jealousy here. And this is where it comes with this specific case. When people were taking to the internet saying like, he's not good for you. He's not good for you. He doesn't make as much as you. You need to get away from him. I never really subscribed to that. Because in the context of black relationships, the vast majority of women are dating men who are not on their academic, educational, or economic level. For every two black women that gain a college degree, one black man does. So they're not, and that's straight black men specifically, because gay men are earning degrees at rates higher, significantly higher than straight men. Actually, we're one of the fastest demographics to be earning college degrees. It does deconstruct our ideas about gender, but I don't want to go off on that tangent until the next video, honey. Tune in for the next video on the gender crisis. But yeah, it's a really interesting conversation for me because it was never about, his economic status. It was always about understanding patterns of abuse and him being able to express jealousy in public. Like, I'm upset that you're kissing your co-star. Honey, this is a job. This is a gig, honey, and it's paying the bills. This is a Disney check. She was an employee and she was going to get Employee of the Month. It was suspicious to me. It was suspicious when you were streaming in a space where she was not aware that you were streaming. And the whole reason why we knew she was pregnant before she wanted the public to know was because she was caught on your stream, belly and wig and toe, pregnant. You wanted that, it read that you wanted that exclusive to come from your platform. That's the way it read. You understood the social consequences of a Disney princess, a black Disney princess, getting pregnant out of wedlock, becoming a baby mama. You understand the social currency of being a baby father and painting her in a specific light. I'm not subscribing to none of it. I've seen the evidence, and until you have your day in court, I'm studying with Holly. Girl, those tropes are tired. And honestly, this issue would have been annoying enough, sad enough, disappointing enough if it was just between them going back and forth, or him going back and forth with himself online. But my disappointment was exacerbated when I saw all these streamers taken to the internet to defend DDG. Not even just defend, but minimize what happened in this restraining order.
Don't believe none of it. I don't believe it until I see that. I gotta hear his side.
As I said, a lot of times when you have a baby mama, it's only a matter of time she thinks she's your boss.
Fuck, bro, DDG always been good, bro, to me.
I'm sorry, is DDG playing in your thing? Or is that just your homeboy?
Are you Peter or are you Patricia? Because we need to figure this out.
And be clear, I'm not insinuating that any of these men are gay. If that were the case, they'd be statistically less likely to be supporting or engaging in violence against women. I mean, I don't know. Last time I checked, the biggest threat to black women's or women's bodies was not a punk, honey. What I am suggesting is that these men may be gay for pay. No, I'm totally kidding. Allegedly. Girl, that was a joke. For real. Cut it out. Seriously though, I do want to respond to DJ Academic's comments about the extortion piece. She's extorting him. This is a space of mutual learning, and I mean that. And so I always welcome people to be, you know, ignorant to certain things. But every now and again, people's stupidity genuinely baffles me. Like, I'm shocked, for real. Is it on? No, it can't be. No, it can't be. So a couple of things are missing here. One, what's required to get a restraining order? It's just not that easy. And two, what extortion actually means. So extortion is when you obtain something from someone by force or by threat. So I'm guessing he means the restraining order. It's just moronic to assert that Halle Bailey was able to threaten or force a judge to give her a restraining order, as opposed to presenting substantial amounts of evidence by aggregating these instances of alleged abuse and presenting it to the judge. And the judge said, oh, this is sufficient for you to get a restraining order. You know, the same evidence that you said was extortion material. For those who don't know, a key part of being granted a restraining order is gathering evidence. That means recorded phone calls if you have them, doctor's visits, pictures, police reports if feasible. You have to aggregate that to show a pattern of abuse. And then when you submit that body of evidence to the judge will assess that evidence and say, oh, given this, I see probable cause to grant you a temporary restraining order until you come to the court. Also, you're not just granted temporary sole custody. The judge had to also see, oh, there's sufficient amounts of threats to your life and your child's to where you need to be granted sole custody right now, immediately. So this is not extortion. This is the judicial process at play. Now sit your dumb ass down and get to the back of the fucking class. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on Tory Lanez, but he has re-entered public discourse. It's almost like he never left. He may be behind bars, but his spirit lives on in the mouth of Drake, in the mouth of Chris Brown, in the mouth of men all across, in the mouth of Aiden Ross and men all across the internet. In the past week, Daystar Peterson, aka Tory Lanez, was allegedly stabbed 14 times in jail. And while I have seen jokes about people saying, well, I need to see proof, show me evidence, show me the stab wounds, boop. To me, that's no laughing matter, right? I've not fully committed to subscribing to the prison abolition gag, right? So the prison abolition girls, feel free to comment, down below why we need to be that way. I'm a girl from the hood who has seen by my own lived experience that there are some people who do need to be separated from society in order to not be a threat to vulnerable populations. It just is what it is. I do believe in reforming. Now, the system, this is a difficult thing because this system was built upon slave catchers, right? It was built in a very racist way. So how do you reform a system that by its very inception was rooted in the degradation, the humiliation, and the dehumanization of Black people? Now, that's a great question. I wasn't expecting that question. But I do still feel that there's a way to reconstruct a system that separates folks from normie society with a real effort to rehabilitate them and not further traumatize them so that they come out and commit more atrocities. This Tory story for me is sad and should have never happened, period. I can say that and also not say that what happened to Megan didn't happen. I don't have to do that. Okay, so since filming this video, Tory's legal team has come out and said that they are claiming that they found new evidence that not only did Daystar Peterson not actually pew Megan Thee Stallion, but that it was a bodyguard who was employed by Kelsey Harris, Megan's then friend, on the night of July 12, 2020, who actually did the pewing, or excuse me, who said that he heard Kelsey say that she had the weapon to pew and not Lanez. Let me say this. First of all, who is Kelsey to have a bodyguard? I'm sorry, what? Kelsey's professional and occupational title was Megan's best friend. And even at that, girl, I don't know many hot girls who need a bodyguard other than the hot girl coach. So that on its face sounds ridiculous. But to me, I don't even believe that they have legal evidence. Of course, they're going to keep doing everything that they can to keep this story alive, to keep Tory's name alive. And I think this is a part of their manipulation tactic. Tory is not getting out of jail. And so what they want to do is to keep conversations, keep the speculation and the suspicion that maybe they got something wrong alive in the court of public opinion. That way, when he comes out, there's a career for him to come back to. He can come out not as what he is, an abuser, a person who assaulted an unarmed woman. But he can come out as a man, a black man who has been wronged by a system. And I do believe that black men disproportionately are wronged and, wrongfully convicted. We've already discussed that. But in this case, I believe Megan Thee Stallion, not because of Megan Thee Stallion, but because I read the court documents and not the Shade Room posts. Megan Thee Stallion has come out and responded to it, and I'm not going to read all of her response, but I do want to read this specific clip. She goes, "I'm sick of this blank, leave me the F alone. He didn't dare get on that stand and deny that he pew-pewed me, and that was his choice because he knows he did that. I don't give a F about a blog or a bot. Why would me, Megan Thee Stallion, have to lie about being blanked? And how are y'all mad at the person who was pew-pewed? Facts are facts. He did it. It was proven in court." And that's the part that keeps getting lost. Everybody wants to believe that there's some conspiracy theory happening because they're too lazy and they're intellectual cowards. They don't want to read the actual court documents. How about you tiptoe your fat ass to the court document and read it? No, you've read 4 pages on the Shade Room, Baller Alert, whatever, what have you, and you've made a decision that's not rooted in reality. So on behalf of Megan Thee Stallion and all of the hotties, and on the people who just recognize truth, F you. And that White Walker in that bad wig sat up on his platform and called this black woman out of her name, called for her to show her bullet wounds again on camera, and called Doechii an idiot, an unintelligent idiot. First of all, sir, you don't even have a college degree. The nerve of you with a high school diploma to call anyone an idiot. Don't you sit online and play video games? You girls have gotten up on your high horse such that, you get a meeting with a very unintelligent man, a powerful unintelligent man. But you get a meeting with a powerful unintelligent man, which another thing that really grinds my gears is how do black men support a man who brought on Trump? But I don't have time for that portion of the discourse. Aiden Ross claims that as a result of his disparaging comments towards Doechii and Megan Thee Stallion that he's lost brand deals, to which I say, show me the paperwork. Show me the contract termination papers, because I don't believe you. And the issue here really isn't so much that these brand deals may or may not have been terminated. It's the reason for which it happened. This white man who platformed Donald Trump, a person with a very racist history, a racial history, because, don't want to be sued, felt that he could say whatever he wanted about these women, especially because they were black women, and that there shouldn't be any consequences. And this is why I say that I am beginning to feel that there is a growing gendered solidarity and a decline in racial solidarity, specifically within the context of these conversations and these acts of violence against women. This propaganda that women have this institutional power to, take down men, to take money out of this white man's pocket simply for speaking his opinion is growing steam. That coupled with Drake's public support and putting a petition up for the judge to overturn or review what his decision on the Tory x Megan case. Megan actually wasn't, it was the state versus Tory, right? It wasn't even Megan. Megan was just a witness. Chris Brown, a known abuser, taking to his platform to defend Tory academics, a known or a person who I seen doing what looked like attacking women, also taking to his platform to defend DDG and all these other people. Something ain't right. Something is happening here. The emotion that men have of feeling left behind has entered the highest points of political life and political discourse. And that's evident by the 2024 presidential election, where a record number of Latin men and a small but growing number of black men voted for the party that they felt was more pro-man, more masculine, that cared about them more. Despite the fact that this administration is taking away Medicaid and Medicare, is taking away food assistance programs, is weakening anti-segregation laws, despite the mass firing of federal workers, which are disproportionately men, despite Trump saying that he wants to give police officers immunity, which will disproportionately impact black men. Despite all that, they like, but that's Big Bro though. He stood on business. It's sad. It's sad. We even see this in the Diddy trial, which should have been an open and shut case in the court of public opinion. Cassie recently took the stand, and even after the public seeing him allegedly beat her in that video and watching him settle that case in less than 24 hours when she filed that civil suit, that has not stopped men from still condemning her and saying, well, why did she stay? Why would she stay with somebody that was abusing her? She obviously liked it. She obviously liked those freak offs. She was the one calling for it. She could have walked away at any time. To me, it's obvious that Cassie suffered from Stockholm Syndrome, which is when you develop a trust or a connection or affection for your abuser. But I think to a lot of men, it's difficult for them to understand Stockholm Syndrome as a concept because they are raised not to cathect with people or to express cathexis, which is this idea of emotionally investing or building emotional bonds and relationships, right? And expressing that emotionality. The reality is boys don't cry and men don't release. Men don't express. And so a lot of times they don't have the emotional intelligence required to understand how someone could be abused and experience a pattern of both abuse and praise, right? And come out feeling a sense of connection because they don't even connect with their homeboys. There are social consequences for men requesting to just hang out with each other. I remember I saw a tweet of a man that went viral where he was like, hey y'all, you know, Sinners is out, in a group chat with his homeboys. Sinners is out. Let's go get together. Let's watch the movie together. And the response was, bro, ain't no bitches in this chat. Don't ever ask us to go out to the movies together. Right? And it's like, wait, y'all can't even go out and bond and watch a movie together because that too is gay. And this fear of connecting, this fear of building emotional bonds is real in men. And so they genuinely do not have the emotional capacity to even imagine, right? So there's the capacity, their capacity to do it on their own, but I don't think they have the imagination to understand something like Stockholm Syndrome. And that is sad. I'll say this, I've laid out all the stats for you. Black men are disproportionately more likely to be falsely accused and falsely convicted of, you know, S assault or S violence crimes, particularly when the accuser is a white woman, and we must create space for that. That said, the biggest threat to black women's bodies in the context of physical violence is black men. Black women are more likely to be harmed, unalived, beaten, abused, and raped by black men than any other person, and that must also be given space. We understand that the rate of false accusations in the context of rape is between 2 and 8%, according to studies across continents. And domestic violence is the most underreported crime. These are the things that undergird my politics. When I'm assessing a situation, of course, I take everything case by case and try to watch it and follow it. But when I'm making a split decision, a rapid decision of who deserves my trust, I'm using that data to create the statistical reality of what is most likely here. And then I'm listening to the stories, right? And you have to have that data to undergird, you know, the emotion that you have for who you're supporting. Our public support really matters in the court of public opinion, and how people have to navigate lives after allegedly being false accused or being, you know, allegedly committing these crimes and being a victim of that crime. We see a pattern here where women are either too old, too ugly, too fat, too much of a hoe, too bitter to be a victim of violence. And I think that there's real introspection needed on the part of men, and I'm calling my fellow brothers out, black men, for us to really use the statistical reality to inform how we approach these things, to just have more grace with one another. And I don't know, we're all in a constant state of practice, you know? And I think that's where I'm gonna leave it. I wanna hear from you in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts on all these things? Let's talk, let's be kind. Okay, because I'm on your ass if you're not. Share this video. I never say this, but share, like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure that you support the sponsor of this channel by at least downloading Ground News. I actually use it. It's a big help. If you're ever looking something up and you want to make sure that you are not reading something that's by the right wing, low key, then you can do that using Ground News. Okay, so that helps me and sustaining this channel and my work out a lot. Yeah, subscribe to the Patreon for all the interviews and subscribe to the second channel for my weekly show, because it's fun. It's lighter topics, you know, it's more whole world. There you go. It's more pop culture tea over there. I think I've done all my call to actions. I love you guys too bad. But before, oh, and channel memberships. Channel memberships are also a thing. So if you're like, I don't want to download Patreon, I just started channel membership, so I'm gonna be uploading all the good things this week. There's already several different videos and podcasts for you guys to listen to, though. I love you too bad, but before I let you go, you know I will never leave you without saying this. I am in a constant state of practice, and so are you. You can never fail when you're in a constant state of practice. I love you. Bye, whole world.